Hey everyone, welcome back to Self-Serving Skillet, and today we are going to make the most beautiful, wonderfully creamy beef stroganoff, and we're gonna serve it over some potatoes. So stay tuned because today we are going to use a flank steak, some mushrooms, an onion, and some garlic, a little bit of all-purpose flour, roasted chicken stock, little white wine, and the sour cream that we made together on Patreon. Look at how low I'm getting. But that's okay, because we're only gonna need about half a cup for today. Let's get right into how to make this. I'm introducing a new segment to the show called Sage Advice, and today's Sage Advice is finds the grain. We're gonna be using this flank steak, which is about $9 a pound where I am right now, and this flank steak is probably about 1.5 pounds, just shy of a kilogram, maybe 75% of a kilogram. And you can see very easily the grain structure going down this way through this flank steak. And what we want to do is set ourselves up so that when we're slicing our meat, we're cutting across the grain. And that will ensure that it's not stringy. If we cut this piece right here, we're just gonna be chewing on a lot of tissue that's connected to each other, and it's gonna be very chewy. But if we slice it across the grain, well, there's gonna be very little holding it together, and we're gonna get a nice tender bite. Now, on something like a ribeye or a New York strip or even a big roast, the grain can be a little bit confusing because oftentimes it is not exactly going in a straight line all the way through. Do your best, just look for it. Look for the grain, finds the grain, and when you get in the habit of it, you'll be able to see it a lot easier. You want to slice across it, but first we're going to set ourselves up to actually cook this piece, because when I'm cooking this on a grill, when I'm grilling this whole thing, no problem. This fits on a grill, just no problem. When I'm using my big flat top skillet, no problem. I'm gonna use this braising pan with this sort of higher wall because we're gonna have a lot of ingredients and we're gonna be reducing ingredients in there. And I want this to be a little smaller. I'm going to cut this with the grain twice to make big long strips, and then I'll also cut this in half. So what it looks like when I have it is this miniature version of this with that grain still going the same way. And then when I cook it, I can chop it this way, I can slice against that grain still and make nice tender cuts of meat for my stroganoff. Or whatever you want. This also makes beautiful carne asada. I've done a whole one of these before for a brunch for maybe 6 friends, and just made slices of steak to go with steak and eggs. It's been beautiful. Let's move on to our mushrooms. Now there's a lot of hype about mushrooms, and I've fed into it in the past. Some people say that you shouldn't wash them in water, you should just brush them. Some people say that you should wash them individually and let them dry out completely before cooking. And some people want to cook them in water instead of oil or butter. Here's what I think about mushrooms is that when they're in the pan, they're gonna expel a lot of that water anyway. Moisture is kind of the enemy of heat because it takes a lot of energy, way more energy than achieving the boiling point to create steam and get water out of your dish. So since we're gonna be reducing things and concentrating flavors, yes, we don't want as much water in our dish to start because we're just gonna have to cook it out. But it's not gonna be that much. So I say, just go ahead and cook them. We're gonna be cooking them for at least 8 or 9 minutes because that's how long our onions are gonna take to get nice and sweet. All that water is gonna come out. And the argument, as far as I can tell, for cooking your mushrooms in water is that they absorb everything for a little bit, and then they start to expel water. And you know what? I don't care. I like a nice buttery mushroom. To me, there are very few flavors. It's probably within my top 20 flavor combinations that I really love. It's a nice buttery mushroom. So yeah, I don't care. I'm gonna do them in butter. I'm gonna do them in oil, and they're gonna come out beautiful, and I'm gonna enjoy my meal way more than those water people. But if you're a water person, be a water person. Own it. It's just not for me. Find the grain of your life. Onions and garlic, we've done these on the show before. In fact, I did a whole episode on onions and a whole episode on garlic. So I'm gonna link those in the description. So we're gonna use about 3 big spoons of all-purpose flour just to thicken this up. Now, this is optional, but if you don't wanna use flour for whatever reason, you're gonna have to thicken this up another way, and my choice then would just be to reduce more to get my liquid a little thicker. Roasted chicken stock. Now, I made this out of a whole roasted chicken that I saved the bones from, and it's nice and gelatinous. We can see that it doesn't even drop down here. I made an entire Patreon video just dedicated to making chicken stock. That's gonna go in the description of this video, link to that. And I also want some white wine. We're gonna go about 1.5 cups of the chicken stock and about 1 cup of the white wine to reduce. And that's gonna take probably a good 4-5 minutes on a medium-high heat to get down to this sort of thicker, sort of syrupy consistency, and that's all just concentrated flavor. And at this point, I'm going to turn off my heat. I don't want any extra heat at this point. I'm gonna add in my steak that's just nice and medium rare at this point in these wonderful slices that are just so tender. And then I'm gonna top that off with our Patreon sour cream. And this is the last 1/2 cup of the yogurt cultured sour cream, which is very exciting. I still have some of the cultured sour cream in the refrigerator for next week's episode. We're gonna make banana bread. I'm gonna incorporate all of these flavors together, and then what I want to do is generously grind some fresh black pepper on top of this. We're gonna taste for salt because the beef has salt on it. We cooked it with salt, so we don't want to over salt our dish, but we probably do want some, so taste and salt and taste and salt until you get it right. Then we're gonna serve over some of these potatoes, and I cooked these exactly like I made those potatoes for our potato salad that we did in the beginning of the month. And I'm just gonna warm those up and serve our stroganoff over top, and the potatoes are gonna soak in all of that wonderful sort of sour cream gravy infused with that chicken stock. It's gonna be wonderful. Parsley is probably a little more traditional, but I have green onion top, so I'm gonna garnish with that. Then we eat. Let's try this out. We have all these potatoes in this nice creamy sauce down here. We have the mushrooms and the beef, and everything is just, it smells amazing. Let's try a mushroom here. Butter mushrooms, one of the best things. That was amazing. Here, let's go for the beef. The beef, I've been snacking on this all day. This is delicious. It just falls apart in your mouth. And in that sauce is just so luxurious. Oh man, all right, a potato in the sauce. That's exactly what I wanted. Man, this is so rich, so delicious. You're gonna love it. Let me know in the comments if you're gonna make this, if you have made this, if you have a favorite Stroganoff recipe. Years ago, I made a ground beef Stroganoff video that I'm going to retire, and that's gonna live on Patreon with some of the older show stuff. As for now, we're gonna look back on some of the sour cream meals that we made a couple weeks ago. Get in the kitchen and make yourself something amazing. I'm gonna see you next week. Follow the link in the description below if you too would like to become a Patreon supporter and help support this show, Self-Serving Skillet.